Well, I didn't think I'd be revisiting this subject quite this quickly, but as you can see, my e-waste gaming PC is back out. That means today, we're going to be doing an update on installing 24H2 on unsupported hardware, because my last video, it's already outdated. Well, kind of. Stay tuned. So these types of videos often change over time. It's just inevitable that when you're working around hardware requirements, the tips that you give in one video may not work later on down the line. However, that's not the case in this situation. Everything in my last video still works perfectly. It's just easier now. So today I'm going to show you an even easier way to install and upgrade Windows 11 24H2 on unsupported hardware. But first, I gotta pay some bills, so check out today's sponsor. Is your copy of Windows 10 unactivated? Well, it doesn't have to be, because with today's sponsor, VIP SCD Key, you can get a valid Windows 10 license for under $20. Stop dealing with that stupid watermark on the desktop, the valid license for Windows 10. Also, with an activated copy of Windows 10, you can upgrade to Windows 11 for free. Just go to the link in the description below and pick up a valid Windows 10 license key. During checkout, use the code CYBERCPU for a 25% discount. Once you have your key, go to your activation settings in Windows 10 and click on the link that says Change Product Key. Enter the product key you just purchased and hit Activate. Now you don't have to deal with that stupid watermark that come with running an unactivated copy of Windows 10. Now, on with the video. So, literally the day I published my video on installing 24H2 on unsupported hardware, Rufus came out with a beta that fixed the problem that we solved in the last video. In the last video, I showed you how to create a Rufus install using a 23H2 and then transferring the 24H2 WIM file to the installer. Now, the reason we had to do this was because Rufus would work for fresh installs, but it wouldn't work for upgrades. And I like to give people the option to upgrade or do a fresh install. So that was the reason why we did the guide in the way that we did it. But now it looks like Rufus has fixed the issues and we should be able to upgrade to 24H2 simply by creating a USB using the 24H2 ISO. So then we're going to test it out today and see if it works. Just like before, we'll be doing it on a system that fails all of at least the important system requirements for Windows 11. This is an AMD FX 6100, which is a triple core processor and not even remotely supported in Windows 11. The system has 16 gigs of RAM as well as a motherboard that doesn't support Secure Boot or TPM. Also, before we jump on the computer, I just want to add that there was a lot of comments in the last video about stuff that I talked about in the video. So while I love the comments and it helps with interaction on YouTube to make the video go out to more people, I would recommend watching the whole video first, because I'm probably going to talk about the question that you have. Or you can just ask the question anyway. Like I said, it helps interaction and allows more people to see the video. So I guess it's a win-win. And if you don't have a question, just say hi. But seriously though, I would highly recommend at least watching this video all the way through, because there's a topic at the end of this video that might be just a little bit controversial. I definitely think that I'm going to get a few comments because of that one. But anyway, let's go ahead and get this computer hooked up so we can see if this works now. Okay, so here we are in Windows 10. If we go down here, I'm going to click on Start, Settings. We're going to go into System. And then from System, we're going to scroll down to About. And as you can see, we're running Windows 10 Home 22H2. And we're running this on an AMD FX 6300. Oh, you know what? It's a 6300. I think I said 6100 at the beginning of the video, but it's a 6300. 16 gigs of RAM. So this computer is by far completely outside of the Windows 11 system requirements. In fact, if we go into and we run the PC health check, as you can see, we go check now, and you'll see we do not support Secure Boot, we don't support TPM 2.0, and the process definitely isn't currently supported under Windows 11. And, you know, the AMD FX processor will probably never be supported under Windows 11, but that is what it is. So we can go ahead and close this. And the first step that we're going to need is we're actually going to need a copy of Windows 11. So to do that, go to Microsoft's website and you can download the ISO from them. And to do that, just scroll down to the Windows disk image, go ahead and select Windows 11. Click download now. And then it'll go through validating your request. And then from here, you want to choose your language. Now, if you're going to be upgrading, this is really important. You have to choose the same language that you currently have right now. I had a lot of comments on people that weren't able to upgrade by keeping their data and applications. And this is probably why. You probably picked the wrong language when you went through this step. So I'm going to use English United States because that's the one I always install because I speak English and I live in the United States. However, if you have an English International version already installed, then you're going to want to choose that one or whatever other language that you possibly could have right now. So I'm going to pick English United States. Go ahead and hit confirm. And then through this point, then they'll give you the download link. And that should be right here. So as you can see, I'm now downloading this right now. But luckily, I already have it. So I don't have to go through this process. So I can go ahead and close that. We're going to go ahead and close our browser real quick. And then we can go into our downloads directory. And you can see right here, once it's downloaded, you should have the ISO in your download directory. Now, the next thing we're obviously going to need is Rufus. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Rufus's website. And by the way, I'll have the links to all this stuff down in the description below. And then once you get here, you come down here. And as you can see, Rufus 4.6, it's already released. So it's not actually in beta anymore. But when it was in beta, you'd have to go down and click on the releases link right here in order to download it. But as you can see, the new Rufus is 4.6. And this was the beta that fixed the Windows 11 in-place upgrade restrictions. But we're going to go ahead and test it and see if it still works. And I haven't tested it since it came out of beta, so hopefully it still works. So as always, I always like to download the portable version. That's the one that ends with the P right here. You can see Rufus 4.6p.exe. If you want to install it, you can do that. Just get the one that doesn't have the P in it. But I'm going to go ahead and get the one with the P in it. So once we download it, it should just take a couple seconds and we can open it up in our downloads directory. And then at this point, we can go ahead and close all the windows that we have open. And then to launch it, just go ahead and double click on it, fire it up, hit yes to the user account control. And then it's going to ask you this question when it first fires up. Now, I would highly recommend saying yes to this question right here. This is whether or not you're going to allow Rufus to check for application updates when it's online. If you hit no, then there's a lot of functionality within Rufus that's disabled. So I would recommend hitting yes for this one. And then once you hit yes, you're going to need a thumb drive, and I have one available right here. I'm going to go ahead and plug into the system. And once it's plugged in, you can go ahead and close it. And you can see right here, I have a blank 64 gig USB drive that's ready to accept our installer. And then from this point, go ahead and hit select, and we want to select our ISO. Now, you're going to want to go into your downloads directory or wherever you saved the ISO that we just downloaded in the last step. So I've got mine right here, and go ahead and click on it and hit open. And then what Rufus does is it automatically detects the ISO and changes all these settings to what it thinks it needs for your specific system. Now, if your system doesn't support Secure Boot, that probably means that it doesn't support UEFI. And if that's the case, you can't use the GPT partition scheme. You have to select the MBR partition scheme. Now, this is a topic that I got a few comments on in the last time we did this video, and I guess I must not have explained it enough in the last video. Rufus allows you to create a USB drive that will either boot UEFI or MBR. Unfortunately, it won't allow you to create a USB that boots both like the media creation tool from Microsoft does. Now, UEFI is a requirement for Secure Boot. In fact, Secure Boot is part of the UEFI standard. So if you have a system that will not boot UEFI, then it by definition won't support Secure Boot, which is a requirement for Windows 11. So that means if you have a motherboard like mine that doesn't support UEFI, then you have to create the USB as MBR, or it simply won't boot. However, the downside to this is that if you want to use the same USB drive to install on multiple systems, and some of those systems support UEFI, then you might run into a problem. Because here's the thing, the USB will work on all systems. However, it will install the MBR version of Windows 11 even on UEFI systems. And I don't recommend doing this. If you have a system that supports UEFI, then I would install a UEFI version of Windows 11. This is not only because UEFI is more secure, because it is, but also UEFI bootloaders are way easier to fix if you have problems down the line. Only use MBR if you have no other choice. If your system does not support UEFI, then you have to use MBR. But if it does, then I would highly recommend using UEFI. But unfortunately, for you guys that want to use this install on systems that are a mixture of UEFI and MBR, then you're just going to have to create 2 USB drives. One for UEFI and one for MBR. Hopefully, one of these days, Rufus will implement a solution that will work for both, like the media creation tool does. But I just wanted to reiterate this because I know I'm going to get comments about it. If you create an MBR USB, it will boot UEFI systems, but it will boot in MBR or legacy mode. And if you boot from an MBR with a Windows install USB, it will install the MBR version of Windows. Now, let's get back to it. Now, like I said, on mine, I have to use MBR. I don't have any choice because this system won't boot UEFI. So I'm going to go ahead and select MBR. I'm going to go down here and I'm going to hit start. Now, it's going to ask me what modifications I want the Rufus install to do to the computer. Now, usually by default it is checked remove requirement for 4GB RAM, secure boot, and TPM 2.0. That one we definitely want to check. But there's also removing the requirement for an online Microsoft account. Now, I don't know if this actually works. I'm going to have to go ahead and test this at another time. Obviously, we can't do it today. But I don't know for sure if bypassing the Microsoft requirements in Rufus does anything. But let me know in the comments below if it does. But I'm going to go ahead and test this myself too. But you can also check some of these other ones too, like disabling BitLocker automatic device encryption. That's another one that's probably a really good idea. And other ones like disabling data collection, and this essentially skips all the privacy questions and things like that. So I'm going to leave it default. I'm just going to have the first 2 checked. We're going to go ahead and hit OK. And it's going to give us a warning saying it's going to wipe out everything on the drive, which doesn't matter because there's nothing on the drive anyway. And once I hit that, it's going to go ahead and do the process of installing Windows 11 onto the USB. And a lot of times it fires this up once it repartitions it. We can go ahead and close that. And it'll take a minute to create this. So I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead until it's finished, and I'll meet you back here in Windows. Okay, so Rufus is finished up. So once it finishes, go ahead and hit close, and we can go ahead and close all of our other windows here, and we can go into our Rufus USB that was newly created, and these should be our setup files. Now, at this point, we shouldn't have to do anything else. We should be able to install Windows 11. So let's see if it works. So we're going to go ahead and hit setup. And the way they've done this is they've actually created a wrapper around the setup install to modify some things when you start the install, but I'll explain more of that later on in the video. So right here, it should be just the regular Windows 11 setup. So let's just go through the process, and we're going to have to go through the checking for updates. So we're probably going to skip around a little bit here so this video isn't as boring. So I'm going to go ahead and let it finish checking for update, and I'll meet you back here when it's done. Okay. Checking for updates finished. Now it gives you your regular license agreement. This is the regular one that you normally see with Windows 11. We're just going to hit accept, and then making sure you're ready to install. So this is another process that might take a few minutes to get through. And of course, as always, checking for updates originally wasn't enough. We've got to check for updates twice. So this one here takes a minute. So we're going to go ahead and skip ahead again, and I'll meet you back here once checking for updates is finished for the second time. All right, after it's done checking for updates, you get stuck with this screen right here that says your PC doesn't meet the minimum system requirements. But as you can see, you can just push the accept button and continue on with the installation, even though your system doesn't meet the system requirements. It doesn't stop you. Now, I really like the way that Rufus did this. They didn't just bypass the system requirements like they have in the past. They instead modified the registry on the system itself to use a built-in function in the installer to make people aware that their system did not meet the system requirements. Now, this is a common screen that you see when upgrading Windows when the version that you're installing doesn't support something that's currently installed on your system. For instance, like this right here, if you have a Windows 7 system that's running Microsoft Security Essentials, which was essentially Windows Security when it was a program that you could install and didn't just come with the operating system, it would tell you when you were upgrading to Windows 10 that Windows 10 doesn't support Microsoft Security Essentials. Now, all you had to do is push the confirm button on that, and it would acknowledge and continue with the installation. Now, if you go through the change logs on Rufus's GitHub page, you can see the discussion where they talk about this, and it looks like all they did was make a registry modification to the system prior to running the setup. In fact, if you cancel the setup from the Rufus USB and just set up from the original ISO, you still get the same screen during setup because the registry changes stay intact. In fact, you can just modify the registry and use the regular setup ISO and not use Rufus at all. Personally, I think this is a pretty elegant solution. I really like it. Now, let's get back to installing Windows 11. So all you got to do is hit accept, and it will continue on with the installation. Now, right now, it's making sure the PC has enough space. It's going to take a second to do this, and then it's going to finish off, and eventually you'll get to the point to where it'll let you set up Windows 11. So it's going to take a second here, so once it's done, we'll skip to the next spot. Okay, and here we go. We're ready to install. It's going to install Windows 11, and it's going to keep personal files and apps. And all we have to do is push the install button, and it should install Windows 11. So since we're installing Windows 11 on unsupported hardware, it's going to take a little bit longer to install. It's not as fast as a new system because obviously it's old. So it's going to take a little bit longer. And also, I just found out that the battery died in my lapel mic. So hopefully you guys didn't have to deal with that for too long, but I won't know how long you had to deal with it until I ingest this footage. But from this point forward, we shouldn't have any more technical issues, especially with Windows 11, but we'll see. If I meet you in Windows 11, then everything went okay. Let's check it out. And here we go. It looks a lot like Windows 11. So let's go ahead and click the settings button real quick, and we're going to click on System. We're going to scroll down to About. And as you can see, we're still running the AMD FX 6300. And we're now on Windows 11 Home 24H2. So it looks like Rufus can install Windows 11 on unsupported hardware without jumping through the hoops that we had to jump through in the last video. I just got to say though, I love the fact that the developer of Rufus jumped on this so fast. Like I said before, the day that my video was released, Rufus was fixed. However, if you created a USB using my last method, it still works fine. There's no need to create another USB if you don't want to. Just know that you can if you didn't watch my last video, then I would recommend using this method instead of my last one from just a few weeks ago. Also, in the last video, I covered the server installer workaround that allows you to upgrade to Windows 11 by just mounting the ISO from Microsoft and not using any third-party software at all. That method still works great as well. However, unfortunately, there is another topic that I have to touch on really quick before we end this video. I got several comments in the last video on people trying to install Windows 11 24H2 on systems with a Core 2 Duo processor. Unfortunately, if that's the case with you, then there's no workaround that will allow you to install 24H2. It's just not possible. The problem with the Core 2 Duo is that it uses the SCE 4.1 instruction set, and Windows 11 24H2 has been compiled with the SSE 4.2 instruction set. There is simply no way to fix this. Unfortunately, processors with the Core 2 Duo will never run Windows 11 24H2. And there's nothing that can be done about it because the processor simply doesn't understand the instructions being called by the operating system. To think of it in a different way, the processor literally speaks a different language and there's no interpreter. Now, I think the hardware requirements in Windows 11 are stupid, and I've made several videos about how stupid I think they are. It's one of the reasons why I do these videos showing you guys how to bypass these system requirements. So I've been extremely critical of Microsoft in regards to this topic. However, and this is where the controversial part comes in, I have to defend them here. So don't call me a Microsoft shill or claim that I'm being paid by Microsoft to say this, because it's simply not the case. But here's the thing. The Core 2 Duo is old. I mean, really old. It came out in 2006. That's 18 years ago. Do you know what else came out in 2006? The second generation Athlon 64. I don't hear many people complaining that they can't run Windows 11 24H2 on their Athlon 64. And just for the record, that doesn't support SSE 4.2 either, because SSE 4.2 came out in 2008. The instruction set itself is 16 years old. I mean, these processors were the first few generations of 64-bit. The reason why the 64-bit instruction set is called AMD 64 is because of the Athlon 64, a fact that probably still pisses Intel off to this day. Now, I'm all about retro hardware, but there comes a point when you just need to upgrade. These CPUs simply should not be running Windows 11 at all, let alone 24H2. Now, I kind of went down that rabbit hole to say this. Microsoft supporting SSE 4.2 is not a conspiracy theory to stop people from running unsupported hardware in Windows 11. Seriously, the reason why we can run Windows 11 on unsupported hardware in the first place is because Microsoft has told us how to do it. These workarounds that we use and get implemented into software like Rufus ultimately came from Microsoft. They made these registry options, and if it wasn't for them doing that, running Windows 11 on unsupported hardware would be considerably more difficult, if not impossible. So yes, Microsoft has stupid system requirements for Windows 11. That's true. It's also true that the system requirements cause the majority of users to buy new PCs because they don't even question the fact that their computer doesn't support Windows 11. But Microsoft supporting an instruction set that unfortunately hard disqualifies a few processors that are almost 20 years old is not Microsoft strengthening their system requirements for Windows 11. It's simply them wanting to take advantage of a newer instruction set. If they truly wanted for us not to be able to run Windows 11 on unsupported hardware, then I'm sorry to say that chances are we wouldn't be able to run Windows 11 on unsupported hardware. They could shut all of these workarounds down, and there's not really anything we could do about it. But with that said, if you'd like to hear my conspiracy theory on why the Windows 11 system requirements exist in the first place, then check it out here. I still think that conspiracy theory is true. And if it is, the Windows 11 system requirements might have saved the tech industry. But you be the judge. As always, you guys have a great day.